Hello everyone. So this is going to be our third class. We're going to talk a little bit about the two other calculators that we'll be using, one being Tableau, and we'll start talking a little bit about Python today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up Tableau. And so Tableau is a tool for data visualization, a lot of drag and drop functionality. It's very similar to using a pivot table like we talked about in Excel in the last class. And we're going to be spending a lot more time doing more stuff in Tableau later on in the class, but we do want to get some of the basics out of the way so you can use it in some of the labs with McGraw-Hill. And so right now I don't have anything up, and the way that you would open up Tableau is the same as in the computer labs and stuff. You can just go to the search bar, you can start typing in Tableau, click on Tableau when it pops up, and it will end up starting. Now mine started on the other screen because I have multiple screens in here, so let's pull this over. And so this is what the interface page with Tableau looks like. Now Tableau, what it does is it is a program that needs data to be able to make the visualizations. And there's a lot of different ways that we can connect with the data. We can connect to files, and you can see right here, this is a list of all the different kinds of things that we do. Now, typically, we will connect to a CSV file, which is that file that we talked about in the last class, which a lot of big data will end up doing. So you would click on More here, and this lists all the different files that you can have. If we go click on this, you can see we've got all these different file types, but more, we'd be looking for a character delimited file or a comma delimited file, which is a CSV file. We can just connect to an Excel workbook. If we go right here, it allows us to connect to workbooks. One thing that we have to worry about is you never want to go into an Excel workbook and then change it to all files and then connect to a CSV file, because it won't work. It'll have problems. It'll have issues. We can also connect to a server. You can see we've got all this like a Microsoft SQL Server, Amazon Redshift. If we go to more here, we can see there's a ton of different online things. Especially our marketing friends might be interested in things like the Google Analytics server where you can go and grab stuff. But right now we're just going to look at the little bit of stuff that we've already been doing. And so we want to go and look at that Excel primer that we did in the other class. So I believe that's a Microsoft Excel file, so we're going to Microsoft Excel. I threw it on my desktop, and so that's going to be located on the C drive, in the users drive. My username on my computer at home is drrob, and then I would go to the desktop. And so we've got it right there, Data Primer Excel, and we can see with Windows that it is a Microsoft Excel sheet. So I'm going to click on that, I'm going to say open up, and it's going to give me an error. Let me go check this out. Alright, so I didn't edit the error out of the video because that sometimes happens, and okay, we deal with it. So in my case, all I did is I restarted Tableau and the error went away. I'm not quite sure what the error was, but once again, sometimes weird things happen. So what we have here is we have kind of the part of the page where we hook up data to Tableau. So right now you can see up here that the database I'm using is that Data Excel Primer. Now a lot of times if we're using a CSV file, data's already going to be populated here. Our issue is if you look over here under Sheets, this is all the information I brought in. I have 3 different worksheets on my Microsoft Excel book, so it doesn't know which one I want to do. So in this case, all I have to do is I'm going to grab this customer data, I'm going to drag it over here, and that's going to populate the data for me. Now, we can link up a bunch of data. We'll talk about that later on in the class. And so what this does is this kind of gives me a preview of the data, and it shows me all the data that we brought in. This should look familiar because it's what we played with the Microsoft Excel pivot tables, and it's organized just like a pivot table. So just like with the pivot table, we've got category names here, and all the information is below it. And so within Tableau, we've got a couple different things here. And so once again, we're just doing the basics. So we're going to start with a worksheet it automatically makes a worksheet. So we're going to go there. So what is a worksheet? A worksheet is what we do to do one visualization, one graph. Later on, we'll talk about making a dashboard, which is a collection of graphs. And so this is the interface that we are going to be dealing with. And so Tableau is all drag and drop. So this stuff will be, should be kind of easy to take a look at. So let's just point out a couple of the big things right now. This area right here, this is the canvas. This is where our visualizations are going to appear. Everything's going to be built off of columns and rows. So we'll put data in the columns and the rows, just like a pivot table, to build the thing up. And so where does that data come from? That data comes from over here where it says data. All these different little things are the category titles from our pivot tables. So just like a pivot table, these would be the field names. Now, within the field names, there are two different kinds of data. And you'll see that some of these icons are green, some of these are blue, and we have this gray line separating them. This breaks them down into the two major kinds of data that we have, which we'll talk about in a later lecture. We'll talk about categorical and numerical data. So everything above this line, all this stuff that is blue, Tableau refers to that as a dimension. Dimension data typically are things like words. They're definitions, they're categories. They're things that we can't do math on. Everything below the line is referred to as a measure. Measures are things that we can do math on. That's basically what it comes down to. Anything that you see over here in italics is stuff that Tableau generated itself. It does not come from our file. Everything that is just regular, that is all stuff that comes from our file. And you also see little symbols here. These little symbols mean different things. Once again, we'll talk about this more a little bit later, but the little hashtag is a number sign. That means it is a number. ABC means it's a string, which is words. The little globe is longitudinal and latitude location data, so we can make maps. This little flip calendar here is showing a date. And there are a couple of other ones that we'll see as we kind of go through things. The marks card, these are called cards. The marks card here just kind of controls how the graph looks. The filters card controls filters. We're not going to worry about pages cards in here. A couple other little things quick. These are sort options here just to help you sort data up and down. And this allows you to switch columns and rows. So we can make a bunch of different graphs off this. And a lot of times it's really the combinations of the columns and rows, and sometimes you're like, I don't know what I need to do, how I'm going to do that. One of the cool things that we have in Tableau is this thing called Show Me. So if you click on this, this is showing you all the different kinds of charts that you can end up using. And so with that, it's really, this kind of helps guide you to how to build things. Once again, later in the class, we're going to talk about, hey, why would I use a bar chart? Why am I going to use a pie chart? How am I going to use an area chart? We'll get to all that. But right now, we're just, once again, still kind of going through the basics. But this is neat because if I sit here and go, hey, I really want to make a map. What do I need? And it tells me, it's like, oh, okay, you need 1 geometric dimension, 0 more dimensions, 0, 1 measures, so you can sit there and go build this thing up. And so that's kind of how things are going. Let's throw together a quick chart just to see some of the stuff and see how this works. And let's go, and there's a couple different ways to do things, but let's just go and we're going to double click on description. I double click on description. It just automatically throws it into the row. And now it's just like in the pivot tables. It's giving me, oh, here are the categories. So I've got apple. And it's giving me the description to begin with, which is just telling me that it's a string. Because ABC, it is letters. And this is kind of how we're going to go and build stuff. And let's go and let's grab, so down here, these are our measures. So these are the things that we can do math on. And so remember, in a pivot table, when we bring stuff in, the data is aggregated together. They do some kind of math on it. So let's go here and we're gonna grab cost. So I'm gonna drag cost into the column. Drag cost into the column. And now it's made, this is what's called a horizontal bar chart. And so now what we got is in the rows, we've got all the names of the descriptions, but then we've got this bar that's showing us what the cost is. And the important thing to note is you see up here where it says sum of cost, we are doing math on that. So just like with the pivot table, it is taking all of the costs and adding them all together. So that little noise was my phone. Somebody sent me a text. I forgot to silence my phone, and we'll just edit that part out. So anyway, it's adding all of those costs together. It is aggregated just like with a pivot table. And here, this is where we can use our sorts, and we're sorting it by the letters and by the biggest to the smallest, smallest to the biggest. Maybe we don't want a bar chart. Maybe we want a column chart. We can click this little button here, and then we can rearrange the rows and the columns. Once again, a lot of this stuff, we are going to spend a lot of time on it when we get farther on in the class, but this is the basics of how this is done. And in the homework that we're going to have, the data, we're going to play a little bit with Tableau and just doing some basics things before we really get into the hardcore. We're going to do a lot of graphs and everything. So this should be enough to get you going on things. The most important thing to remember with this is going to be that the data is aggregated. It is all put together. And by default, it goes to sum. So just like pivot tables, we can change that. So these are called pills. And anytime that we want to change something with it, we can just go to this arrow, we can down click on it. We have a lot of things that we can change, and right off the bat we can go, maybe I don't want the sum, maybe I want to change it to one of these other things. And actually, if you notice, these categories are all pretty much the same as like we did with our pivot tables. So let's go here to sum, and we are going to go to average. And now we've changed the aggregation method. So now we've got the averages of all of that data and not the sum. All right, so that's the basics, how to get everything going. Let's talk about saving these files. So we can just hit the little save icon here, but if we go File and go Save As, now by default, it's going to save it as a Tableau workbook, a TWB. For the most part, that's not what we want to do with these, because all the Tableau workbook does is save the instructions for how to make the graph. So if you send this to me, I can't open it because it's going to open up and go, well, here's the instructions to make the graph. I need the data. So I would need the data set to connect with it. So for us, the easiest thing to do would be to save this as what's called a packaged workbook. So if I save file type, if I click on this and go to packaged workbook, you'll see the file, the extension's different. It's TWBX, which means that it takes a copy of all the data and saves it in the file. So let's go, and I'm going to just call this test, and then we're going to throw it in, we'll throw it in the downloads folder. So this is a shortcut. This is taking me to C:users drrob/downloads, and then I will just save this here. And so now when I go to open that file, all the data will be in there, and I'll just be able to open it and take a look at it without a problem. Almost every file that you do in this class is going to be done like that. And especially in the exams, if you don't submit it like that, I can't open the file. I'm not going to be able to give you credit for what you do. So get in the habit of saving that now. Once again, these are the basics. In Chapter 6, we're really going to dive heavy into Tableau, but this is enough to get you started and going through with the homework as we're playing along with it. And that's all. So if you have any questions about Tableau, let me know. Make sure that you save this file because this will be uploaded as part of your engagement for the class.